As the world is rapidly changing, China and African countries are becoming closer together. During his first visit to Africa 60 years ago, late Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai introduced China's 8 principles of foreign aid, much of which still underpin the country's approach to Africa today. Notions such as equality, mutual benefit, and the non-interference have laid solid foundations for China's relations with African countries. 6 decades on, China has not only helped construct signature projects such as the African Union Conference Center and the Lekki Deep Sea Port in Nigeria, but also expanded areas of cooperation to sectors such as satellite communications and clean energy. To take things to another level, the 2024 summit of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, or FOCAC, is to be held in Beijing from September the 4th to the 6th. What can we expect from the summit? Where are the two sides going next? And in the context of the profound changes currently taking place in the world, what can China and African countries do together for each other and beyond? Welcome to The Point, an opinion show coming to you from Beijing. I'm Li Xin. I'm pleased to be joined from Nairobi, Kenya by Dennis Munene, Executive Director of China-Africa Center at Africa Policy Institute. From Johannesburg, South Africa by David Monyae, Director of the Center for Africa-China Studies. Also from Nairobi, Kenya by Cheng Cheng, Lead of Asian Partnerships at the Sustainably Growing Africa's Food Systems. And from Jinghua in China's eastern Zhejiang province, Professor Zhu Yaxiong, Associate Professor of the Institute of African Studies at Zhejiang Normal University. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point. So this show, I hope, will give people some background information leading up to the summit. Exactly where are we at this moment in terms of China's relationship with Africa? And I want to go to Mr. Dennis Munene first. Exactly where are we? What's the state of things for China and Africa at this particular moment?
One is that first, thank you so much for having me. The state of China, Africa right now, it's in a good shape. We've seen a lot of cooperation between China and Africa. One of the things that we've seen, especially on the issue of infrastructure development, we've seen China has done a lot of foray within Africa. It has helped Africa to be able to play in the big leagues as other countries in the world. The other things that we've seen is that between China and Africa is that we've seen a lot of economic cooperation, which is critical, especially the 22 years that FOCAC has been between China and Africa. We've seen a lot of changes on economic development. We've seen a lot of industrial growth as a continent, especially for Africa. And that has helped to ensure that Africa grows. And also now we can be able to say that Africa is rising finally. Thank you.
Mr. Monyae, what is your take on the importance of China-Africa collaboration at this particular moment? We're seeing, as I mentioned, very profound changes and also conflicts in different parts of the world. People are wondering where the world is going. What is the significance of China and African countries becoming closer together?
When you look at the two parties, Africa and China, I think they agree on a number of issues as well as collaborate on core issues within global multilateral system. They have managed to assist each other in different periods. As you stated in the beginning, 60 years ago, China had an agenda of assisting Africans flowing from a number of core issues. It's on 5 principles of coexistence, the Bandung conference that had taken place, a great background in which both China and Africa share common vision on how to close the gap between the developed countries as well as the developing. Iron out all colonial at a political level, bringing in China back to its seat within United Nations Security Council. It was Africa that helped China regain that status. And likewise, in the post-Cold War, we've seen a developed China working hand in hand with Africa, helping Africa in terms of dealing with its crisis of underdevelopment. And we are going to also see a number of new areas, what I like to consider as new forms of solidarity on issues of science and technology, people to people, deepening the relationship and setting the pace for other countries and other structures to follow suit what Africans and Chinese are doing together.
Mr. Cheng Cheng, your take, especially from the Chinese side, what is China eyeing for this particular summit? We understand the theme of this year's summit, for instance, is joining hands to advance modernization and build a high-level China-Africa community with a shared future. These notions, first of all, modernization, because we have been stressing a Chinese-style modernization, and also this notion of a community with a shared future. These may sound like empty or lofty notions, but what exactly does it mean for China to promote these notions, to pursue these goals with our African counterparts?
Generally speaking, I do see a mutual shaping and reshaping process between the African side and the China side. Regards expectations, visions, the term you just used. More and more we see a lot of collaboration on the international stage between the China side and African side. For instance, AGRA is one of the largest organizations in Africa doing agriculture and food security. And we received tremendous support from the Chinese government and the private sectors for the transition of the food system here in Africa. And apparently, to transform our food system, to elevate the productivity in the yield, and we need a lot of technology support, know-how from the China side. And thanks to our counterpart in China, we received tremendous support. For that, we're really grateful. And for fighting over climate change, we also see a lot of collaboration. I think more and more China's vision is getting into immersed and integrated into the African vision. That's how I see it.
Well, that's very helpful in understanding why these big visions may be important when China is approaching relations with its international counterpart. Let me go to Mr. Zhu Yaxiong. You have been promoting think tank communication, and you have been visiting countries in Africa to share your experience or your understanding of China's growth. What do you think African countries are looking for in China's experience at this moment, and hence the significance of the upcoming summit?
African countries are in great need of developing themselves in terms of poverty and increase the food production. So in that case, actually realize that based on our own experience in China, we started from all these things to solve. First, to try hard to feed the people, and then based on that, we may have some surplus rice for sale to increase our income. Based on that, a very positive cycle of the economic development starts. So in that case, we see currently African countries are in great need of technology in terms of security and also in terms of a lot of infrastructure for them to develop their economy and provide a better life for their people.
During a ministerial meeting in 2021, that is 3 years ago, Chinese President Xi Jinping announced the 9 programs under the first 3-year plan of the China-Africa Cooperation 2035. And there are 9 main areas, mainly in medical and health program, poverty reduction and agricultural development, trade promotion, investment promotion, digital innovation, green development, capacity building, and cultural and people-to-people exchanges, and peace and security program. Let me go to Mr. Munene. What do you think is the significance of having such a vision for bilateral relations and putting it into action in a phased manner?
First, let me take you back to 2000 at the inception of FOCAC. At that time, Africa was ravaged by a lot of drought, the economic issues, there was instability. And at that time, if you look at the Western media, they painted Africa as a hopeless continent. I remember that was the front page of one of the magazines, especially The Economist, saying that Africa is hopeless. And then afterwards, President Xi Jinping came with the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. At that time that you find that now Africa and China decided to come together and ensure that they push this cooperation further. 10 years later, the same Economist magazine published that Africa is rising. But none of them were able to state exactly what happened between those 10 years. And that time, that's the time when now you find that Africa was experiencing economic growth. That time that through China's help, Africa was experiencing infrastructure development, something that Africa has been struggling a lot, especially in the aspect of development. And then we come to the 2018, especially before the 2018, the 2015, the 8 initiatives that were unleashed during that's the Johannesburg summit. And then we come now to the 9 initiatives during the Dakar summit. And those initiatives have been so critical, especially in helping Africa to advance and express now what you call the high quality development. As you have said, the issues of capacity building. We've seen China has been able to ensure that Africans are trained and be able to get the appropriate technology to help them steer their economic growth. We've seen the issues of the digital connectivity. Today, African countries can be able to tap and access the global markets. Initially, we were just trying to push our ways and trying to see how we can be able to trade with each other, and it was not working. We've tried to have our Africa Continental Free Trade Area to ensure that we can be able to tap into each other's. But now with the digital connectivity, it has helped us to be able to ensure that we broaden our market base. When you come at the issues of health development, as you're all aware, during COVID-19, Africa's health system showed as one of the weakest links. And so with that, the issues of health will be able to push and ensure that we can be able to have our own vaccines, produce our own vaccines. We can see the Egypt's production, where we can see that China is able to help Egypt build a big storage facility. That has helped and continue to help. And so the 9 initiatives are going to transform Africa. They have transformed Africa. And also, as we wait to hear what is going to be the outcome of the 2024 FOCAC summit, we know it's going to be more of the addition to what the 2021 initiative are able to help.
Mr. Monyae, what is your take of the importance of these projects, or the projects under the 9 programs? And as we are entering, as this is the last year of the phase of implementation of the 9 programs, where are we in terms of delivery?
I think so much has been achieved. I think if you look, my colleague has alluded to a number of issues. We have seen how Africa has taken advantage of China opening and learning quite a lot from China. Firstly, I think what these initiatives, what they've done, they've also attracted not just investments from China, it has also attracted investments from other parts of the world. Because China is keen and investing quite significantly on the African continent. We see Americans coming in as well. We see Europeans also investing in a number of areas. But all in all, particularly on infrastructure, I think we have a physical infrastructure across East Africa, West Africa, and a number of areas. Some you've mentioned in Nigeria, the port, the metro rail that has been constructed. In Egypt, a new city is coming up. So with this infrastructure coming together, working across the continent, Africans are learning, and they're also taking advantage of this to trade among themselves. It's opening the bottlenecks on trade among Africans to be able to work together. And I think there's also an issue of going beyond just the building of infrastructure. We've seen with increased number of students getting into China. And I think in time we're going to see the knowledge and skill transfer, technology transfer into Africa to enable the continent to service this infrastructure, also to lead in a number of new areas. The core issue at the center of 2024 summit, I think it will be the question of the critical minerals, that Africa is rich in mineral resources. However, Africans are now saying they need to work closely with China to ensure that there's beneficiation of these critical minerals. And we see excellent example in which Chinese are working with Africans when it comes to lithium, the case in Zimbabwe, where lithium is not just being shipped to China, it is being beneficiated into batteries right in Zimbabwe. I think this is a good example, and a number of African countries are also demanding other investors to do the same.
Mr. Monyae, let me follow up with you on that. You were mentioning other countries also coming to invest, or other groups also coming to invest in Africa. What has China and Africa stepping up their cooperation meant for the other investors? Are they seeing a race? Is China's investment in Africa spurring a race to invest in Africa, or is it attracting? Definitely, China is attracting a lot of bad-mouthing on the international press, and it seems that China is not picking on the others for doing what they're doing in Africa, but the others, a lot of them are picking on China in doing what China is doing in Africa.
I think both. You see the bad-mouthing on a number of key issues. On big infrastructure, I think we've seen that those who are not willing or unable to measure up to what China is doing on the continent tend to use the so-called debt trap as a way of blackmailing China. And this is not working. We have seen that in the case of Zambia and the negotiations over Zambia's debt. At the end of the day, it was found out it is not China that is a problem in terms of Zambia's debt. It's the very same lenders from the Western world. On infrastructure as well, criticism of China on one hand, and we see Americans and Europeans building the Lobito corridor from Angola to the Democratic Republic of Congo into Zambia to deal with issues of critical mineral. And if you see the very same corridor, it is going through the mining sectors of these countries. And therefore, there are double standards that are being used. But I think the call by the African Union and as well as economic community in Southern Africa and East Africa is that there is a need for Africans to take stock and ensure that you close the gap in terms of what partnership with China as well as the Western world when it comes to key issues on infrastructure, for example, on rail, to ensure that there are common standards that are used. You don't replicate a colonial pattern in which different colonial powers had different standards of rail across the African continent. So it doesn't really matter whether a rail is constructed by China or Western world. It has to speak to each other to maximize Africa's regional integration.
Mr. Cheng Cheng, let me get to you. And of course, your expertise is on the sustainable agricultural agricultural aspect and poverty alleviation, I believe. What has China's experience meant for the local people who have been suffering from poverty, who have great gaps in terms of their know-how, in terms of technology, in upgrading Africa's agricultural sector?
Absolutely. You just mentioned the 8 and 9 initiatives issued different FOCAC summit. And all those measures have brought tremendous incentives for African and people, investors from other parts of the world, just as David just mentioned, to invest more into the food system here in Africa. Just because China has the grain channels and all this tariff special treatment for African countries. And now China has become one of the largest importer of African agricultural products. As you can understand, most of the poverty still live in the rural area. So just by elevating the import of agricultural products from Africa, China has provided a lot of support for.
May I interrupt you there? Because this is an area, this is a point that's rather not talked about so often, because China has been promoting imports from Africa, agricultural imports, for instance. Have you a case of example that you can share with us in one of your projects, for instance, where with China's help, that a local village or a local household has been able to not only grow more but sell more and export to China in particular?
I can tell you, we can see those numbers that reflect what you just mentioned. China worked very closely with AGRA, because AGRA is a Pan-African Agricultural Development Agency. So both sides will work very closely to lift up the trade. The number that bilateral trade between China and Africa only for agricultural products has reached to nearly $10 billion last year. And it comes from almost nothing to like 10 billion in very soon, within 2 decades. And there is an even better case. I suppose you live in Beijing, and a lot of Beijingese people enjoy the avocados.
Yes.
And avocados now dominating Beijing market were facilitated by AGRA and the China trade deal. Last year, Kenya and one country exported $104 million worth of avocados to China's market. And it might sound not so much, but if I understand, it grows almost the triple times, like 3 times more, compared to the 2022, when we first ship out the first batch of a fresh avocado to China. Those growers, most of them smallholding farms, they receive like 10 times more of income only from one crop, that is avocado.
Wow.
And also benefiting beautiful capital city in Beijing, people over there on their table.
Sure. And as Chinese people continue to appreciate imports with lower tariffs, with lower prices, I'm sure imports from African countries will be even more abundant in the future. Let me go to Mr. Zhu. From your interaction with your African counterparts, what are they looking for? What more are they looking for in terms of collaboration with China, in terms of concrete projects?
You see, they are looking for a lot of experience, expertise from China, and because you are also looking for very actual investors to help them increase their production, and also they wish to introduce their agricultural products to China. But sometimes I tell them, it seems to me it's pretty expensive for them, for their products to be transported long distance to China, because some of the agricultural products are actually in competition with agricultural products produced in nearby countries like Vietnam and Myanmar, etc. In that case, their products are not in a very good position to compete with such products. So sometimes we are looking for also the likelihood to have some prior process before some products can be sold to exported to China.
In your day-to-day interaction with your African counterparts, what are you looking for to come out of the summit that will bring concrete changes in the near future?
So we are actually looking for a lot of platforms. So because with in my interaction with the international African friends, they are looking for a lot of potential investors or some project cooperation. We wish to see there are some platforms through which the potential investor and the potential project owner or real estate owner who wish to cooperate, they can have a kind of face-to-face meeting to facilitate the proceeding of cooperation in the future.
Before we wrap up, really very quickly, I'm going to give the last question to Mr. Munene and try to keep it within 30 seconds. How important is China and Africa cooperation for the Global South in general? If you can wrap that up in 30 seconds, please.
One, the cooperation is very key. It's important. It's helping Africa to grow. One of the things that as a nation, as a continent, we've seen is that for a long time we've been under development. And so their cooperation has enhanced China to grow. The cooperation has also given platform for civilization to be able to enhance their dialogue and ensure they get to talk and deal with issues that pertains to them. Thank you.
And Mr. Monyae, very quickly, you want to add something for the Global South? How important is this forum?
This forum is critical as China deals with the new quality productive force. I think there are a lot of lessons in terms of technology transfer into the Global South. I think there will be more unity within Africa, China, and extending to the broader Global South.
We have to leave it there. Many thanks to my guests from Africa and here in China, Dennis Munene, David Monyae, Cheng Cheng, and Zhu Yaxiong. And with that, we come to the end of this special edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and X using the handle Liu Xin in Beijing. On behalf of the whole team, thank you for watching. We've got The Point.